In his essay on the prospects for the study of world literature, Franco Moretti coins the term distant reading to name an approach that could reverse the paradigm of scholarship glossed in his essay by Mark Bloch as years of analysis for a day of synthesis. The synthesis, for Moretti, is a development of an interpretive system built on the years of work produced by generations of scholars working on a small set of texts. This process, Moretti argues, cannot scale. Worse, the system will, by necessity, be built on second-hand accounts of the texts under consideration. A distant perspective enables one to directly examine vast numbers of objects. Distant reading names a process that differs from close reading in terms of the selection of evidence from which we might make interpretive arguments. While close reading is a slow, hands-on practice that is best suited to a single text, or even a small passage within a text, distant reading aspires to generate textual numerical evidence from texts at large scale. Moretti points to the limitations found within the narrow scope of the singular text used in close reading. He proposes methods of distant reading that can provide scholars with a wide enough scope that could enable an understanding of the system, by which he means the literary marketplace, national literatures, and even the world literary system in its entirety. At the same time, Moretti is interested in units that might be smaller than a text. For example, devices, themes, or tropes found across large archives of texts. The restricted evidence found in the singular text complicates his ability to critique larger systems and makes the study of world literature almost impossible. Of close reading, Moretti writes, "At bottom, it's a theological exercise, very solemn treatment of very few texts taken very seriously, whereas what we really need is a little pact with the devil. We know how to read texts. Now let's learn how not to read them." There are multiple tools and approaches that could be called distant reading. We could think of the possibilities of reading across all of the texts written by a single author, those published during a single year, or even all of those found within a conventional literary period. We can even, contrary to Moretti's own desires, apply some distant reading techniques to a singular text. The large archives used and the complexities of these techniques generally require digitized texts and computational methods. If close reading is associated with the qualitative, we can link distant reading to quantitative approaches. This means more of an emphasis on the extraction of information from texts and counting. One quite common example of a basic distance reading tool would be the visual display of quantitative data within a text called word cloud. Word clouds are a simple way to display the relative frequency of words from a digital text. The larger the word, the more times it appears in the text in relation to the other words. Now, without reading the text, we can get a quick sense of what it might be about. It works well with a single text and can easily produce a word cloud from a collection of different texts. Word clouds, however, are simple tools that hide important information and ignore structural elements within a text. Google's Google Books archive of digitized text contains thousands of historical documents, magazines, and books, including many from the 19th century. Through an interface to this collection of texts available on the Google Books website, we can get a rough idea of the relative popularity across time of single words or multiple word phrases called n-grams. For example, a search for the phrase fugitive slave will show that this term was much discussed during the debate, passage, and eventual repeal of the Fugitive Slave Act in the middle of the 19th century. We can also plot the relationship between a set of terms, for example, the words novel and romance, and see how the popularity of these words may have changed during the same period. From here, we can click down into smaller temporal units and eventually find individual texts. Google's n-gram tool requires some input. We have to know what we are looking for or experiment until we find something of interest. There are a number of distant reading tools that can help us discover possible search terms and phrases. We could begin with the most common terms, those displayed in large type in a word cloud, or from another quantitative tool that displays word frequencies. Collocations are another way to find search terms. Collocations are the pairing of words that frequently appear next to each other. These tend to be proper names, but they may also give us an idea of commonly used phrases. The collocation list from Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter includes names of major characters such as Hester Prynne, Roger Chillingworth, and Arthur Dimmesdale, as well as the phrase 7 years, which is the number of years that have passed since Pearl's birth. Literary scholars, including Stephen Ramsey and Matthew Jockers, have begun using another technique called topic modeling as a form of distant reading. Topic models are a way to organize a text or a collection of texts into computer-generated thematic categories. Rather than supplying a list of hierarchical keywords to group documents, the algorithm discovers shared topics based on textual features that are frequently used to fit documents, or in this case, texts, into the discovered categories. They can also be used on a set of texts to locate potentially important topics and phrases that can then help us locate other texts. Not all distant reading strategies need to involve the conversion of the text into quantitative data or complex machine learning algorithms. Crowdsourced annotations of text can function as a form of distant reading. When given a cursory scan or read in aggregate, these can signal important sections, topics, themes, or language that other readers have located. If you had seen your Amazon Kindle display the number of highlights on a section of text, you have seen an example of crowdsourced annotations. Another popular tool is Rap Genius, and its annotation tool that was initially developed for song lyrics and has recently been extended to literature and other types of texts. Other platforms, including edX, have similar tools for sharing our annotations with others, allowing us to view our close readings at a distance.